Very well. See, you guys are doing. I'm having kind of a Monday over here. My own situation, just to let you guys know, I work part time at home. I work part time at the library. I full time am watching a sixth grader do sixth grade. So after a year of school at home, it gets a little tense around my house sometimes. We're a little bit tired of each other, I think. So um, I see a lot of emotionally drained, exhausted. Um, some of you guys are doing great. I think that's wonderful too. Some people have really adapted very well to some of these changes, but some of us not so much. It's just kind of about accepting people where they are, and something that I've tried to do
Hi,
during.
how are you? I just got out of my lunch meeting.
Oh, welcome. Super glad you're here. Um, so something that's really been helpful to me is that accepting people's emotions for where they are, not trying to tell anybody how they should feel, not trying to correct anyone's feelings or sometimes even give advice about those feelings. There's a lot of, we just need to accept where we are. Cheryl feels like she's running on a treadmill. I totally get that. And then I see some of us maybe have gotten our first vaccine, we're planning to get it. Some people are feeling really hopeful right now. And I think that's something that is a little different from a year ago or even 6 months ago when we all just felt like everything was so unknown. I think a good thing is that at least in the last couple of weeks since the polar vortex is over, some librarians and educators are getting vaccines in Kansas and Missouri. I've heard more people say in the last couple of weeks that they feel hopeful than I have heard in the last year. So that's good. But whatever your feelings are and however you feel, they are valid and important, and nobody can tell you that they are wrong or incorrect. People get to feel what they feel, and that's okay. So I wanted to let you guys know my first tip: accept people's feelings and don't try to tell them how they should feel. And good afternoon. And I'm glad you all shared. Thank you so much. So let's go into some of my tips and tricks, some of the things that we've done at Kansas City Public Library that I've done with my library staff during this pandemic time, just to try to keep things going good and keep things as good as they can be. And really, the best thing, honestly, in my opinion, that you can do is be a good communicator. Tell people what's going on. Make sure people are aware of the things that are happening. Make sure people are aware of the processes that might happen next. Communication is the key to getting through this together and to having a staff that isn't just kind of going crazy. We have had great communication at times throughout this pandemic year at my library system, and there have been some times we have not. And you can definitely tell a difference when people know what to expect. They know people are being honest with them. It definitely makes a difference to have good communication. So in case I haven't mentioned, I think communication is the key to all of this. Um, and we're going to talk some more about that. So we're going to keep communicating, and that communication needs to come from all the levels. We need to have communication from our highest level of administration. We need to have communication from branch managers, from every manager. We also need to have communication coming from the bottom up. Managers need to be asking. We all have that one staff member, maybe one or two, or maybe even three, maybe more if you're super lucky. But sometimes you have staff that will come to you and tell you all the things. But sometimes you have staff members that they won't tell you anything. Even if they're awesome staff members, they're the kind of people that never want to complain or never want to be seen as complaining. So they just often won't say things. So that's why our top down needs to be asking questions, and our bottom up needs to be listened to. They need to be heard. But they also need to be communicating what's going on in their world. What are the problems in their world that we can fix? And then we have to listen. So communication has to include listening, being honest. We need to keep it real. That's been another thing that has been so appreciated during all of this by my library staff, is that if I don't know something, I say I don't know. I don't know the answer to that right now, but I'll sure try to figure it out instead of just making something up or saying something that might be glossing over the real problem or even glossing over how I feel. You know, if I go into work every day and my staff's like, "Oh, April, how you doing today?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm great," every day. You know, maybe, but that's also kind of fake. And how can I expect my staff to open up and let me know how they feel if I'm showing them this fake, everything's great side of myself, right? So we need to make sure that we're talking, we're checking in. This communication can be casual communication, but also scheduled formal communication is important, particularly right now. So people need to know, oh, hey, I have this time coming up that I'm going to get to talk with someone for this real check-in that matters, that's dedicated time and not just 5 casual minutes when I happen to maybe be passing by you from 6 feet away. Um, so communicate, communicate, communicate. That's the key to all of this, I think. Let's see. So I'm saying communicate, communicate, communicate. That's really easy for me to say, you know, keep talking, keep communication open, all those things. But here are just some other tips. A couple of these I touched on already, but again, I think they're so important. Say when you don't know something. There was so much unknown throughout the last year, right? So many things about COVID we didn't know at the beginning, but things that we know a little bit more of now. So during that time, you know, people were freaking out, and that was okay for them to do. But there were so many things they would ask, you know, when are we going to open again? What's going on? How's our services? What's all this? I don't know. I don't know those things. I still don't know some of those things. And I still just try to be as honest as I can. Our big questions have shifted now to when are we going to reopen? How are we going to reintroduce services? All of those things that we're planning for now to do, you know, gradually. That's just what my library system is choosing to do. But there are a lot of things I just have to say, you know, hey, we haven't even gotten that far in this plan. I honestly don't know that. I mentioned communication up and down being very important, asking questions, listening to questions, answering questions honestly. Listening closely is really important, but also making sure that you understand who you're talking to is really important. I had some particular staff members that were really touchy about certain things, and that was okay. It was okay that those things were difficult for them, the spread of COVID and being scared to be at work and some of those things. But I also knew that if that person was sitting at a service desk, that's definitely not something I was going to bring up at that time. That's not the right time to do it. That's one of their touchy points. So if you do need to talk about that, then find a time that's the right time to talk about those things. In every situation, I always try to start with positive, saying the positive things, following up with maybe the thing that needs improvement or the thing that might not be the best news, and then kind of putting another bookend on that with a positive thing or a positive way that we're going to move forward. So, you know, thank you so much for the great work you've done. We're going to change this work process just a little bit. This is going to help us moving forward for all of these reasons. So I try to use this bookend the bad news with positive praise and positive ways that we're going to move forward. Also during this time, as much as we all are workhorses and we have sets high expectations for ourselves and for our service and for all the things, right now is the time to be realistic. Right now is the time to honestly say, I don't have the capacity to do that. We don't have the capacity to do that. We could reopen our library tomorrow, but no, we can't because we don't have the capacity to do that right now. We've lost staff during COVID, all kinds of things. So as much as I want to go out there and be doing all the things and performing and being productive and doing and winning all the awards and doing all the stuff, you know, the things we like to do and how we used to work, in this situation and with this pandemic, that's not always realistic. So we have to avoid setting those super high expectations that are just going to make everything more difficult for everyone. That's not to say that we totally need to be slacking off. We shouldn't have, good expectations of what the outcomes are going to be, but we also need to be realistic. Can people realistically meet that expectation and still be able to take care of themselves or still have a positive outlook? All of those things are important right now, as well as programming numbers and all the things we used to worry about so much. I want to tell you guys 1,000 times to advocate for your staff and for yourself. This is so important. If you hear something happening that you think will adversely affect you or your staff, it's your responsibility to say something. Always be solution focused. That's really important to me, that we're not complaining during this time. We're talking about problems and trying to find solutions. That if somebody, a staff member, a colleague comes to me with a problem, they're not just complaining about their problem. We're trying to find a way to fix that problem. And you can't fix every problem. There's so many things during this time that have been just completely beyond our control, right? Things we can't fix. I certainly can't fix COVID. I can't make it less contagious. I can't do all those things, but I can make sure that we have the proper PPE. I can make sure that we have workflows in place that are following the CDC guidelines, things like that. And again, the idea, you guys, just be honest. If you don't know something, say so. Just be honest, be open and honest. And that way you build that trust. So if something does happen, you have that trust built. So let's talk some more about creating a positive environment at our libraries, for our library staffs, and also for ourselves. Nobody wants to be somewhere that's a downer every day, right? So let's talk some about that. So I am going to ask us to do a brainstorm, and I'm going to open my chat window here. And I would like to know, well, first let's talk about brainstorm. I'd like everyone to contribute. You can use the chat or shout out. All ideas are good ones, and we'll wait to clarify anything until after we've got a bunch of ideas thrown out there. So in your chat box, y'all, I would like to know, what are some things you're doing at your libraries to create a positive environment, to make things a little more fun, even when everything seems like a downer? What are some things you guys are doing to create a positive environment? Feel free to type them in the chat, shout them out. Let's get some ideas out there. Lisa brought fresh flowers in on Friday. That's awesome. That's something that I've really done for myself during the pandemic. I've probably gotten myself more flowers this year than I ever have before. Aldi has great deals on fresh flowers. Birthday pie, that's awesome. Diana's building a new lab for their library. What's that all about, Diana? What's a lab? Remembering to laugh. I love laughter.
Okay, this is Diane, and the lab is a place that our librarians, who are all on screen today, or most of them are on screen today, will be able to come in and use a die cut machine. They'll be able to use, they'll be able to look at our collection, to browse our collection of kits, and just, we hope they can come soon.
That's awesome. So like a little resource center kind of,
yes,
to do all the fun stuff.
Yes.
I love that. Crystal just put, she's asking about staff. She's asking staff about, their weekend plans, trying to create a more comfortable, less stressful environment. I think that's awesome. Just saying hello and offering an eye smile. We have masks on now, so I have to remind myself people can't see my smile because I smile at people a lot. But, an eye smile or a nod, or just saying, hey, you're a person, you're here, I see you today. Ooh, Christy sent their librarians a "You Made It" prize for making it through 2020. That's awesome. Zoom party with games, playing audiobooks. I've had libraries that have said they're doing dance parties, food days, just all kinds of things. Another thing that my staff is really, they always go crazy if you get them t-shirts. They love t-shirts. So literary t-shirts are incredible if you can find any kind of money in your budget for that. These are some really great ideas, you all. Thank you for sharing. I love it. A couple of you also mentioned some things you're doing at home, which is also great. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that as well. Snacks make everything better. I think that's totally true. Elementary school Valentines to share with staff. That's a really good idea too. We put up a big whiteboard at our library for staff, and we just write nice things to each other. And we're also doing pop-in pickup for materials, and we bag a lot of the materials for privacy reasons. And I have some staff that have started decorating the bags and doing some art during some of their time at work, which I have a couple of employees that were just like, you want us to what? Isn't that like wasting work time? Are you sure we should be doing that? I'm like, yeah, just draw on the bag. It's cool. The customers will like it. You know, it's okay for you to do that. But I had to get some of them sort of past that old idea that I'm at work and this time should be super productive and super focused on work things to, you know, why don't you take a few minutes and relax and draw a little bit of art? But they seem to be enjoying it now, and we get some really funny pictures. So again, thank you all for sharing your great ideas. That's awesome. So one of the things that we've really focused on working on, I'm not sure that's right, but one of the things we've really focused on throughout the last year, and even before, we were pretty good about this, but then we kind of fell into this rut where there was like a negativity cloud over the library. So we're trying to, you know, do more of this, is basically just change the narrative from this negative narrative to a more positive narrative. And you know, my mom told me a lot when I was growing up that, you know, we make a choice how we're going to feel every day. We make a choice if we're going to be happy that day. And, you know, to a certain extent, I kind of give my mom credit for that, because, yeah, we do have some choice in it. But in a situation like this, you know, some of it we don't have a choice. We can make a choice to repress our feelings for sure, but we don't always get to just choose how we feel. So some of the things that I heard at the library from my staff were a lot of fear, so much fear, you know, we're in so much danger, and just kind of trying to respond to that in a more positive way, but also a way that doesn't say you're wrong, because you're not wrong. We are, you know, there is a certain amount of danger being around other people and offering public service and all of those things, but there kind of always was in some situations. So, you know, instead of responding like, oh my God, I know we're in so much danger, we're all going to get COVID, we're all, you know, doomsday is happening, the zombie apocalypse is coming, we're done, you know, you can't respond that way, obviously. So what do you say? You say, yeah, you know, I acknowledge that you feel that way, but I sure am glad our administration has gotten us good PPE. They're keeping up with the latest studies, you know, just trying to list those positives that, yeah, this is all really scary, but we're taking steps to make it not so scary. We had a lot of people coming in that were just being mean. They didn't want to wear masks, all the things, you know, which is fine. And some people are mean, but you know, we have processes in place to make sure that the people that are mean don't get to keep just coming back and being mean over and over. So that's good, right? And hasn't it been great to see some of our regular folks again? So, you know, just you guys can read the examples, but just this idea of taking whatever's happening here in this negative space and trying to acknowledge it, but also find something positive to add to it. You know, I have my last one, just my scream, like, like I'm just losing it. And I've had staff that have had days like that, you know, and it's great when I can say, okay, you know, you're having a day, take today, go home, calm down. But that's not always possible because, you know, you have 4 people trying to run your library, short staffed, and these people are on quarantine and these people called in sick. So it's not always possible, but it is always possible to ask, what's wrong? Tell me what's really going on. Tell me what happened. so we can try to find a solution that can at least make you a little more comfortable. You know, nothing right now is going to be perfect, but let's at least find a way to make you a little more comfortable.
April, I do have a comment in the chat.
Okay, great.
It's hard to feel like a vital part of the community when many people only need us to sign them up for Hoopla or Sunflower eLibrary Overdrive. They really couldn't care less about all we're doing as long as their account works online.
So I would change that narrative by saying, isn't it phenomenal that these people are still getting to use library materials during this weird, crazy time? And think about how much you're helping them. You are totally still helping people if you're helping them with their Hoopla accounts. They love Hoopla. Hoopla is the only thing keeping them sane right now, possibly. You don't know that person's situation. So even helping people online via phone, all of those ways is still helping people.
And it's something we weren't able to do for them probably 5 years ago or 10 years ago. It's
Right.
something that's really evolved a lot this year, but it's something that's transitioned how we work.
It totally has. There's been so much transition of work, which is something I'm going to talk a little bit more about in a few minutes, and talk about some of those feelings of self-value and self-worth. It's a lot. It's a lot, you guys, right now. And I can tell you, I had a period of time when my daughter first went back to school that I wasn't working. And my career has been my hobby, my passion, so much of my self-worth is tied into my work. All of those things. For me to not work was like torture. I just felt like I wasn't doing anything. I felt like I wasn't contributing. It was really hard for me to do. So some of that is mourning a loss. And I think as managers, as supervisors, as coworkers, one of the most important things that we can do right now is acknowledge people's loss. We are all going through grief because of loss that we have felt over the last year, and that is okay. But being familiar with the stages of grief can help us so much as managers. The stages of grief being denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. There's a good chance your staff members, yourself, are probably in one of those stages of grief right now. And maybe you're acknowledging it to yourself, and maybe you know that, but maybe you don't. And maybe your staff member can't figure out why they always feel so angry, right? I'm just so angry. Or maybe they're lashing out because they're feeling anger, right? Because they have had unprecedented amounts of loss this year, for whatever that means. My loss might have been my feelings of self-worth that my job provided for me. Their loss could be my grandma got really sick and died. Their loss could be I'm financially struggling because of this pandemic and I lost my second job. The buses schedules changed, right? I can't get to work my scheduled times anymore. There's so much loss that people are dealing with. Understanding where they might be on that scale could potentially be one of the most important things that you can do for your staff. You're so worthwhile, even if you're just helping with Hulu. And everyone should know that. And even if you're not helping with Hulu, you are still worthwhile because you are a person. And we're going to talk more about that right now, because the best thing you can do for your staff right now is take care of yourself. Your staff need you. They see your example. You are their model of behavior in so many instances, both professionally and personally. So you have to take care of yourself. And we're going to talk about that and what that looks like. Because it's hard. So, but you guys, this is going to take more than a pedicure. This is going to take more than a face mask, spa treatment, pampering. There's a lot going on here, right? Some of the things, and you guys can chime in. Are you suffering from any of these things right now? Decision fatigue, and when things first were happening and we were all forced to make those decisions so quickly, that was exhausting. Some of us have trauma. Some of us have the secondary trauma from dealing with whatever's happening at work. Somebody comes in, they refuse to wear a mask. It turns into a whole scene. We've had a lot of ugliness like that. I don't know if you guys are having some of that same stuff, but we've had a lot of that. The secondary trauma of it all, coming to work every day and watching your staff struggle or watching your coworkers struggle can cause secondary trauma. Like, even if you're doing okay, watching other people not do okay is hard because we're empathetic people who love others, right? So that secondary trauma can be very real. Exhaustion. A lot of us were feeling exhaustion. Everything just seems a little bit harder right now. We lack time. We have too much time. There's this huge sense of loss. All of this is happening to us and we're just worried. It's a lot. It's a lot to deal with, right? Gail took a nap. Congratulations. That is awesome. Some people are upset that the books are still in quarantine and maybe they're being nasty about it. It's a lot to deal with, you guys. Just look, you guys are dealing with so much of the same stuff that we're all dealing with, but it's going to take a lot more than a pedicure to get us past some of these things, right? I know for me, it certainly is. So here's some things that I want you guys all to avoid. And the first one I'm going to say again, just by being a person, you have self-worth. Just because you're a person, every person is worthwhile and worthy. And your productivity does not correlate with your self-worth. I know that that's easy for me to say. And it took me some serious time to be able to accept this and show myself self-grace. Self-grace, I think, is what I've learned in 2020 more than anything else. My self-worth is not based on my productivity, and neither is yours. So if you need to chant that like a mantra, please do so. Just getting through the day, sometimes that's all, sometimes that's all you can do. And you know what? That's okay. You made it through the day. You deserve a cookie or a pat on the back or whatever. You are worthwhile. Okay. If you don't get anything else out of this, please know that you are a worthy person no matter what is going on at work. Okay. I want you all to avoid acting like you aren't having a hard time too. I mentioned that earlier, right? If you go to work every day and you have a big smile on your face and it's fake sometimes and it's real sometimes, and some people really are coping great, and that's okay too. But if you act like none of this is affecting you, then people are going to think you're fake. People are going to know you're fake. This is affecting all of us. And by bottling that up and acting like everything's okay all the time, you're doing yourself a disservice. And you're doing others a disservice as well, I think. Please don't take on all the work. You can't do it all right now. You don't have to do it all right now. Some things don't get done. You know what? That's okay. It'll be okay. Everything will be okay. Right? Don't be fake about your feelings. There are some things that, we're not going to go to work and sob all over our desk probably, but if you need to, you can, and that's okay. But you really shouldn't be fake about how you feel. It's okay to say when your coworker, you get into work and your coworker asks you how you are, instead of putting on a fake smile and saying, great, say, we had a really rough morning at our house. It was hard today. Last night was hard, but today's a new day and we're going to move forward. And that's okay. I want you guys to avoid venting to the inappropriate people. There are some people that you can vent all of your life problems to, and there are other people that it's just not the right person to vent to. So know your support system, know who's who. Don't vent too much about work things to other people you work with. Have friends for that. Have someone else, colleagues that work other places. I have an amazing support system of friends and librarians. I know who to say certain things to, and other things I shouldn't vent to the inappropriate people. So use your best judgment and make sure that you're sharing your feelings the appropriate amount with the appropriate people, right? And last but not least, don't think that you're invincible. This is affecting everyone. And I want to say that even people that seem to be coping with this incredibly well, or that adapt to change incredibly well, or all of those things, know that that can also be a trauma-informed response. Some people cope with things like this really well because they've been through past trauma. So even if they think, you might think, wow, that person's got it all together, they're doing great. You don't always know what's happening on the inside of that person. So here are a few things that I think you guys should practice daily as best you can. Showing grace to yourself and others. This one is tricky for me. Like I told you earlier, this has been my year to learn self-grace. I have shown grace to others and been such an empathetic person all my life, but I did not always return that to myself. I'm very good at accepting other people for who they are, but not always good at accepting myself for my faults. So making sure that we're showing grace to ourselves and also to others. I have a good example of this one that also goes along with the next one, assuming the best about yourself and others. I was in a meeting and a colleague made a comment about, it was a discussion about mental health, and somebody mentioned that parents are having a really hard time right now with all the changes in school and trying to help their kids through this and all of that, which is true. Parents are having a really hard time right now. And this coworker happens to be a single male, and he said, well, it's really hard for all of us single people too that are picking up all of the slack. And I can tell you guys, when that came out of his mouth, my immediate thought was so defensive and so angry and just so many things. Like I felt so many feelings when he said that, like bad feelings, negative feelings. I thought, I'm just going to bite my tongue right now. I'm going to think about this. And I know that guy, I've worked with him for several years. I know he doesn't really think that I'm a slacker. I know that wasn't directed at me personally. And I know that he's not the kind of guy that thinks the worst of others, or, I needed to assume the best about him. And I needed to not spew out a bunch of ugliness or bite his head off because he made that comment. That's how he feels, and that's okay. I didn't need to get defensive. I needed to show him grace and also show myself grace. Like, April, you're not a slacker. You're doing the best you can. This guy's not a mean guy who's calling you a slacker. Assume the best about him, show grace to him and to yourself. I don't know if that story helped or just made that more confusing, but you guys get what I'm saying.
That does help. That's a good explanation. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. I want to encourage you all to be empathetic towards yourself and others, to know and say your limits and to love yourself. I was just started reporting back to work in person a couple of days a week. And my boss approached me and he said, I know your situation with schooling hasn't changed, but do you think you could do this? And I thought about it for a week, and I'm thinking of all these possible schedules that would take away any free time that I really have. And I finally had to say, I can't do that. I can't schedule myself to be in work at person every minute that I'm not overseeing school. I have to find something else to find balance. So that was just one example of when I had to say, I know I could go do this and be super productive, but that would not be good for my own mental health. So I can't do that. And love yourselves. Love yourselves, you guys. I love you. Love yourselves too. So you're saying, okay, April, this is all great, but who has time to do all of these things, to take time to feel empathy and take time to have grace for myself and give myself a foot massage and journal all my feelings and do all the things, that would make me feel better. So again, I'm going to say, with your time is precious. If you're exhausted, rest. If you're hungry, eat. Take care of yourself with your time. I had to protect my time because I know that that's important to me. And I have to remind myself again, and I'm going to say it one more time, you guys, your worth is not measured by your productivity at work. Okay. I want to warn you guys, don't compare yourself to other people. There are people right now so much more productive than me in some ways, but I can't compare myself to that. I'm doing what I can do right now to take care of myself and my family. Let yourself rest. Give yourself permission to feel your feels. That's an important one. Your feelings are valid. Nobody should tell you they're not, and you are allowed to feel them. If you need to take a moment, shed a few tears, you shed a few tears. If you're really angry and you need to get that anger out, feel your anger, feel it, revel in it a little bit, and then move on. Feeling your feelings is important. I want to mention again to educate yourself on grief and the stages of grief, and realize that you and the people around you are probably in one of those stages right now. And I want to remind you guys that self-care doesn't have to take a long time. You don't have to take 2 hours or half a day to go to the spa. If you have a minute or two, you can stop and you can center yourself, and you can take a couple deep breaths or take a big stretch, or just do something to ground yourself, to say, you know, I've got a couple minutes, I'm going to breathe a little. How am I? How am I right now? And what do I need to do to get myself to a better place? Okay. I see a little more happening in the chat. Oh, somebody mentioned they like to read sad books. I read sad books. Yeah. Oh, you guys are so wonderful. I'm glad you're having a whole chat happening there, because I want you all to connect and share ideas. So that is about all that I have. I actually went through that pretty quickly. So I just have a couple resource things here. You guys can always get in touch with me if you want to talk more, if there's anything that you think I can help with, if I can share more information. And I want to share a resource. I did not put together a massive resource list for this, because my darling friend, Brandy Sanchez from the Daniel Boone Regional Library here in Missouri, has this amazing, working, living, fabulous Google Doc resource that she's put together that she's given me permission to share. So I put that link on here for all of you. Brandy is also amazing. She just did a really great MALA workshop about self-care that was very helpful, but she's got a lot of really great resources listed here, so I didn't reinvent the wheel. So what else can I tell you guys, or is there anything I can clarify before we wrap up here?
April, this is Gail.
Hi, Gail.
Can you copy that link and paste it in chat for us? I don't think I can wait until tomorrow to get the slides.
I think I can. If I can, I'm going to stop sharing my screen here.
That'd be great.
And I'm just going to sort of go right out, and then I'll pop right back in. So
Thank you.
I can do that.
There were so many key points on your presentation. Your productivity doesn't determine your self-worth. I know you said that several times, and that's one I struggle with, because I always seem to have an ever-growing list of to-do things. And some days I'm better at checking things off than I am on others. And some days it's just adding to the list. So it's good to just remind myself that it's like I'm still contributing to a career I'm passionate about, but that doesn't mean I always have to have a clear to-do list at the end of each day. That's not a reasonable expectation anymore.
Yeah. When I heard that, and I'll tell you guys, I'll say Brandy Sanchez, the amazing Brandy Sanchez from the Daniel Boone Regional Library. If you guys don't know Brandy Sanchez, knowing her is like a privilege and a pleasure. She's one of the most amazing people. Brandy Sanchez said that in a self-care workshop she did for MLA, and I literally think it changed my life, you guys. I had never shown myself grace in that way. I've had a job since I was 14 years old. I've never not worked. I've never not worked really hard, and I've never not been really successful at the work that I do. So much of my self-worth was wrapped up in that. So when that was shut down, it was just like, I didn't even know what to do. Like, I didn't even know what to do. It was really hard for me to deal with.
This is Gail, and I have a number of chronic illness diagnoses, and that's been the case, I think, 5 or 6 years now.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually think that some of the coping mechanisms that I use to get me through day-to-day life because of those illnesses gave me an advantage with COVID. because I knew how to be mindful. I knew how to breathe. I knew how to relax. I knew how to do what I call preemptive rest. If I know I'm going to have a hard meeting, I rest beforehand. And I think that those gave me an advantage. What the advantage I didn't have was a lot of the stuff that you've talked about, being aware that we're going through grieving processes and supporting others through that as well. It's been a very interesting year full of a lot of different kinds of learning.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing, Gail. I really appreciate that. So many of those things I've learned this year. And I honestly, I feel hopeful that now that I know those things, moving forward, I will be a better, more balanced person. I'm starting to kind of, I think I've made it through, or we as a collective whole have made it through this tremendous year that was so hard and so full of everything that we didn't know how to deal with. I think I'm finally to the point where I can start thinking like, after this, these are the things I'm going to keep. These are the things that I have changed and that I know how to do now. I've already started finding the positives of the changes that will still be happening after, which I think is a good step, because I have not always been there. You guys, trust me.
This is Mary Beth. And one of the things that I think I'm better at now than I used to be is getting myself out of the negative spiral. And that's like how you said, turn the negative into a positive attitude. When you see something or you hear something that's kind of gets you down or get you into that pole, you can say, okay, how else can I look at this? You know, it's like, you always like, what's a challenge that you can now call an opportunity, or, you know, opportunities to improve, I think is what we used to call, you know, things that we're failing at. So now where are the opportunities for me to improve? And I think I think a lot of us that have learned that the hard way this year is how to, okay, our doors are closed. So how do we spin our library services in a way that keep people remembering the library, but keep us giving those services to our libraries and to our community? Because everybody's here because we care about our community so deeply, and we want to make sure our patrons have what they need.
I can tell you an interesting story. I just came from my Rotary meeting, and we have people on our roll call who haven't paid dues for a while, like, you know, since last March. And we were talking about what should we do about these people? Should we send them the bill or whatever? And so I said, well, let me tell you something about the library world. It's called Amnesty Week. And I explained it, and they said, oh, that's the best thing ever. And I explained, well, I think we should do it for a month and say, hey, if you want to come back, we're going to absolve those fees. Librarians have always been really good about listening to our patrons and being compassionate, but I love that you've talked about giving yourself that grace, because that has been so important and probably one of the most difficult things for people.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. It can be really hard.
Yeah.
I think we often treat other people better than we treat ourselves.
Yes.
All right. Any other questions or things that I could talk about or expound on?
This is
How are
Michael.
you doing? Oh, go ahead, Michael.
This is Michael from CKLS, and I just wanted to share something that I learned recently, is just how important your physiology can be in actually helping to affect your emotional state. And so, for instance, if you're about ready to explode and you're just feeling real angry, and you would say, that is so fascinating, and actually change your face and your body and how you react to that, and it actually helps affect your emotions too. And just kind of, it's kind of breaking the, like Mary Beth said, the negative spiral.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that totally works. Stuff like that totally works. Smile when you talk on the phone because they can hear it in your voice. All those things. Another thing that's been really important to us, and something that I've really been working with my staff on, both for their own communication and for communication and de-escalation with patrons that might be feeling their own ways, because you guys we're going through this, our staff is going through this, our patrons are also going through this. And sometimes that comes out in not so beautiful ways at the library, right? We've been working really hard on I statement language. I statement language is amazing right now. I feel this way. because of whatever, not that blaming someone else. So we've been working really hard on that. Like, I saw this thing, or, you know, making it really personal about you so it's not attacking to anyone else. That helps a lot.
It's really helpful. Got some comments in the chat. This is an awesome presentation. So
Aw,
thank you.
guys. Thank you so much. I'm just so happy that I could be here to share with you all today and to be part of this conversation. It helps me as much as it helps you to remind myself of all of these things, but also to get to see librarians' faces and be part of the chat. I just really love this stuff. It's one of the things that I miss. So thank you guys for having me and for your time today.
Thank you, April. And you're getting applause. I don't know if you can see the people. I want to thank you very much for working with us with our rescheduling, because I know I threw out several dates at you and then said, no, that's not going to work. So you guys see me, see me not at my best too, trying to find a due date. So you're very easy to work with, and I appreciate that. And I think you gave our librarians a lot of good pep talk and encouragement, which when you're a year into this and we're not yet out, even though it may be closer with the vaccinations, you know, that encouragement kind of just inflates your sails a little bit. So I really appreciate that.
My pleasure. It was so my pleasure. You guys have inflated my sails too. And it really was great to be here with you all.
Friends, this is Patty. Yesterday, as you saw the news, yesterday marked the 1 year anniversary of the first coronavirus case in Kansas. And I would like something from all of you. I've kind of bugged the CKLS staff today, but if you would all take a photograph of you and your staff in your masks. I'm going to put those together into a slideshow to put on our Facebook page to show that we are all still doing our part. It's not hard for a few minutes. If you'll take that picture and send it to me or post it on one of our Facebook pages. It's one way to show that we're all still in this together and we're doing everything we can to make sure our doors are open.
And there's a comment in the chat. It's wonderful to realize I'm not the only one still not back to normal. And there are still libraries that are just doing curbside. There are still libraries that are limiting people in their community or into their building. Some libraries aren't doing any programming yet. Some are only doing programming outside. Some are doing programming on Facebook. Find what you can do and what you can excel at, and let the other things wait on the back burner right now. Just do what you can, and that is good enough.
And it's not wrong, whatever it is you do. And don't let somebody tell you something different.
I do see a hand raised for Wilson. Cherry Lee, do you want to unmute and ask your question?
No, that's fine. I don't.
Oh, okay.
It was very good. Very good. I wanted to say very good.
Thank you. All right. Oh, there's her face. Now I can see Cherry Lee. It was great seeing everybody again today. We do have another Tuesday with CKLS on the 16th. It's Talking Books Week on the 16th. So I hope you guys join us then. Thank you, April, for joining us today. We have a few more minutes if anybody wants to talk, but we'll just leave it open to you guys.